Oh, come on. Hello, Governor. I wanted to try to explain why I think it is super important to buy your first house as young as possible. You can buy a house with 3%, sometimes 5%, and depending on where you're at and what you're getting paid, sometimes 0% down. Especially in a lot of different areas, you can do 0% down. Buying a house at that, you have to live in it for a year. Buying a house as young as possible, even if you don't get the best deal, it's really hard to lose. It's a buy and hold investment, of course. Getting a house 0 down for something you're going to spend money on anyway, or 3% down, something you have to have. As in, if you go and rent, you're going to pay it and never pay a mortgage, somebody else's mortgage, for however long you rent there. With getting a house with 0% down, or 3 or 5, you can get in to a long-term investment with no or very little money down. Houses are constantly going up with inflation, with the values of them. Get something in a nicer area if you have that ability to. It's constantly going to be going up in equity. It's an investment like no other. There's no other investment that you can put 3% or 5% or 0 and build equity and grow something and potentially live for free. There's no other type of investment. Property, land is so powerful for its ability to do leverage, to grow your business. It's a powerful tool. Buying your first house, you can house hack. You can rent out the rooms, or if you get a duplex or a quadruplex, you can rent out the other apartments and potentially live for free and potentially get paid to live. There's no other investment like it. I mean, you can get into a deal like that for 3-5% down. You can throw in $20,000, $30,000 or less potentially. I mean, if you're going 3% down, there's duplexes out there for $200,000 that are in really nice shape. You can have the other apartment pay your bill and potentially live for free. Then throw your money in the stock market. If you don't want a whole bunch of properties to worry about, get your income, get the ability to live for free, and then what you would throw towards a mortgage, throw into the stock market. I'm not saying that I think an index fund or something like that worse off than houses, but if your entire income is going towards your rent, it doesn't matter. You don't have any money left, or most don't have any money left to put towards the stock market, any type of investment fund like that. That's why I think buying your first house is so important. I think rental properties are something that everybody could profit from or could potentially live for free off of. I know that not everybody is set up or has the ability to operate a bunch of rental properties. That very first one, I think, is key to a successful potentially early retirement, because there's so many people out there that live to rent to sleep. It's a vicious cycle. I don't think that renting is necessarily the worst thing in the world. There's a lot of people that don't have the ability to buy a house, and landlords offer the ability with less down and a lot of times less credit or something like that. They offer the ability for people to live in a nice house and have a place to sleep. All I'm saying is, don't spend your life paying for rent, not investing. If you want a free future, I'm not saying to become rich or to be a millionaire one day, but to have the ability or the comfort to lay around or go learn a new skill or try a different job, and don't feel like if you miss a few paychecks or if you quit your job or the world's going to come to an end. That first house is very important, and I think it should be purchased or save the money if you have the ability while you're with your parents, or if you could roommate for a while, live tiny, live super tiny until that first house is in your name and you have the ability to have the say-so of who stays in what rooms or who stays in which apartments, and until you have that ability, live way below your means. I wanted to talk about the first house I bought. Me and my sister, my older sister Rebecca, we got motivated looking for a house or buying a house started a savings account after reading Poor Dad, Rich Dad. She had read it probably a year before I had got a hold of it. I listened to the audiobook. I'm not much for reading at all. When I listened to the audiobook, I think some light bulbs started going off, dollar signs started floating around, and me and her started a savings account. It was fairly regular. We tried to stick in 100 a week or 200 a week. We had saved up to, I want to say, about $6,000. We had been looking for houses, but we hadn't got a realtor involved or anything. I had went to go estimate a yard. A coworker named Danny recommended me to go estimate a yard. And when I got there, the guy was wanting to fix up the yard a little bit or clean up so he could put his house on the market. So it hadn't even been posted on the market yet. We had bought it, I think it was $170,000. We had talked him down like $4,000 or $5,000. Fell in love with this house. It was 2.3 acres. It was the main house, which was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, and it had a full unfinished basement, a garage, an attached garage an attached garage. It had a separate garage and a garage in the very back. You could park a lot of cars in the shed. We first started off renovating the upstairs, the one that was already livable. We just did cosmetic stuff. We actually stuck it on the market once we had bought it. I had moved into it, started changing out things, light fixtures. We did paint, simple things, flooring in the kitchen, nothing major, and we rented it out. Our mortgage at the time was, I want to say $1,200, and we rented out the upstairs for $1,450. So we were like barely covering the bills, but we had bills covered. I moved into the basement and started renovating the basement. While I was living in the basement, it had nothing down there, no plumbing, there's no bathroom downstairs, no kitchen downstairs. We moved in there and it was rough. We had a little bitty eye that I was cooking on. I started off in a rush. I put in a bathtub and a commode, and I was washing my dishes in the bathtub. I was working crazy hours, but every afternoon I was doing something to that basement, whether I was tiling or framing or sheetrock or electrical or plumbing. My brain was active throughout the whole thing. I don't know if I just recommend anybody getting into a project like that, but it was probably the quickest way to a strong education. I had learned a lot of different remodeling before this. Worked for my dad and my grandfather, working on apartments, doing plumbing, electrical, and framing, and sheetrock, construction since way before this. To take it all on is a lot, especially by yourself. And I had more inspiration than I had money. And every time me and my sister would get money, and I was recycling stuff. Anytime a superintendent or somebody would tell me that they were going to throw something away, my brain went patched. So much sheetrock. I mean, anything that we could find, whether it was 2 foot by 2 foot, I was putting it on there, which was completely ridiculous because the effort and time and mud that I put into it, it would have been better off to go buy brand new sheetrock. I learned all kinds of things about sheetrock. Running sheets side to side and putting a seam in the middle of the wall. It's not hard to do mud. You want to limit the amount that you have to do. Running them straight up and down, you only had one mud seam and you didn't have any blunt ends, which is something I learned in the construction. There was tons of things, but that's just one thing in particular. Finally got it about done, and before I moved into the back, I had got it livable. I moved into the garage apartment on the back of the property. The essentials in it had a jacuzzi tub, a toilet, double door refrigerator, big stove, big oven, a bed. Before we moved out of the basement, it was hard to leave it. We had put so much work into it, and then just to kind of move into something that was unfinished, to move right back into another construction site was definitely not easy. A lot of self-control. But it also helps when we got to thinking about it was going to be $1,000 a month cash flow flowing in from the basement. When the money started coming in from the basement, it definitely helped. And I'm glad we did, because we weren't growing our account off of the house any. And after we rented out the basement, we're making good enough money. And then, of course, everything falls apart when you start making money. The air conditioning unit went out, and that costed us $6,000, which the house paid for it. And we've done things to it, like we've renovated the outside, the exterior. But besides that, not much else. And I stayed in the back building, and I was getting paid to live. We lived back there for probably a year, I finally decided that I wasn't home enough because I was traveling full time for work. I wasn't home enough to have a reason to have a home back at there. My parents were always wanting me to stay at their house when I was close to home because I was gone so much, and I still am. Gave it to an employee for a while. I finally ended up renting it out. So now the first property that I have makes us $1,800 a month. And we talked about refinancing and getting more, but we haven't exactly completed that yet. I don't know that everybody's first house will be so much fun, or maybe even not even turn a profit for a while. The reason I think everybody should buy a house as young as possible, you also have the ability to walk into a lot of equity. You have the power of leverage and stuff in your future. I've talked to people over the years that have not bought houses. They have to work every day to make sure the rent's paid. They have to put effort into a job that they probably loved at some point, but over the years it's wore them out, and they don't love it, and they complain very bad. Having a house gives you the ability to, at some point, either refinance and get a lower amount so you feel more comfortable, rent out rooms if it doesn't come with the size or the abilities that ours had for in-law suites or basement apartments, or turning them into duplexes. I put a lot of work into that first house. It's probably done us one of the best. Like I said, we bought it for like $170,000, and we've paid it down over the past few years. But not only that, but there's a house next door that is sold for $230,000, and it's half the house and half the property. So the equity in it has skyrocketed. Zillow estimates that it's worth about $300,000, which if we got that much, it would literally blow my mind. But I don't doubt it. It's very close to commercial buildings and stores, and it's not but 10 minutes from the Mall of Georgia. We now have a lawn care service that takes care of the lawn. I was mowing 2.3 acres. Now it's just a positive income, and we've done many deals since then, but I just wanted to tell people about our first deal and why I think getting a house, I think before you invest into the stock market or wherever you think your money can work for you the hardest, I think getting that first house is even if you're not thinking of it as in future renting it out or house hacking or any of these things, owning a house and buying a house so that you can build up equity so that maybe one day you could refinance it and buy a bigger house or whatever it may be. Getting that first house as young as possible is super important. I mean, I think that you should be smart and safe about it. Maybe listen to Dave Ramsey on, getting your $1,000 up for you to fall back on to have that backer. Getting in that first house is super important, I think, for a financial free future.